We are the shadow people. We don't exist.
Hello and welcome. My name is Myriam Catrin. I'm a texture artist in visual effects. Welcome to my podcast. Let's be honest, a life and a career as a working artist can be very fulfilling, but it's not for the faint of heart. It's filled with challenges and obstacles, and the path forward is not always clear or simple. On this podcast, we discuss all of this openly and honestly with experienced artists who have already walked that road. That's why I call it the naked texture artist. There are many podcasts that focus on and celebrate all the big achievements in visual effects and animation. But my career as a texture artist has not been one unending victory lap. So personally, I'm more interested in learning how my fellow artists handle the hard things, when things don't work, when things break, or when we're expected to produce the impossible. All of that stuff that takes place behind the curtain. So I invite you to join me on this journey. Hopefully together we can learn from the artists who went before us, save ourselves some scars and some tears, and increase our joy as working artists. Welcome to the Naked Texture Artist. The absolute gem in my collection of interviews is the 4 hours I spent talking art, cinema, VFX with Myriam Catrin. Yes, you heard me right. 4 hours of tape and no fat or fluff on that. Just solid gold. Two things struck me when I was listening to our conversation. Make no mistake, Myriam is an absolute giant in texturing. Her contribution to cinema makes her, well, she's basically cinema royalty. But ever so humble and gracious. There's no posturing or bragging with her, no ego, and she graciously leaves room in the conversation for a lesser artist like myself. What can you say about that? Just a really nice person. When I listened back to our conversation, I also felt deep gratitude for the deep and detailed insights Myriam shared. She's incredibly generous with both her time, her honesty, her experiences. I have to say, it's a great shame, and I feel a lot of regret that these gems have not been shared with a wider world until now. Yes, life in visual effects keeps you really busy most of the time, and you can probably imagine how much spare time I've had for the past 2 years since this conversation was recorded. Also, mind you, this conversation is 2 years old. So there are things which have obviously moved on since then in terms of technology. Keep that in mind as you hear her take on the state of things in textures. On a more sad note, re-listening to this conversation revealed to me how much I have lost my way since then as an artist. These episodes remind me of why and how I am an artist and how I have loved this work that we do. Textures, but also how that love since then has been brutalized and corroded by bad gigs, which leads you to losing your guiding light, that star you navigate by, which is a particularly empty and bitter darkness. Re-listening to my conversation with Myriam provided a bit of, what should we say, artist therapy for me as well. Just basically helping me to put me in touch with why I do this work, or why I did do this work, why I started out doing this work, why I've loved it for so many years. And sometimes as we're buffeted by the waves of production and everyday life, we can lose sight of that, and that's a terrible place to be. And I'm hoping that this podcast in general, and specifically these episodes, can help other artists, you, the listener, recalibrate your existence as an artist, and in addition to learning and growing, but also helping to find your way back to your center point if you have lost your way along the way. What do you do with 4 hours of gold? Well, I'm no Joe Rogan. So, a mega episode, multiple hours long, I don't think so. I think in this day and age, all of us can only retain concentration and focus for so long. So, I'm cutting this conversation into 20 to 30 minute chunks and releasing them as individual episodes. Here is the first part of my conversation with the brilliant Myriam Catrin. You're the dragon lady.
I am, yeah.
Where did the dragons come from?
Because I drew dragons as my personal art since very, very long time.
Yeah. Where did it start? Do you
Uh,
have a moment where you
yes,
fall in love with dragons?
yes, actually, yes. So it's a very cheesy story. Sorry, it's when I was kid. I was I went to cinema to see all the Disney movies, and there is a Sleeping Beauty.
Oh yes.
And at the end of the Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent transformed herself in a dragon, and I saw that it was the most beautiful thing I ever seen. So as a kid, I started to completely focus on and being obsessed by drawing dragons. Since then, my family offered me books about tales, like Chinese tales, about dragons and everything like this because I was obsessed. Yeah, and I started to draw dragons since then. Yeah.
I see. I've been looking at some of your dragon paintings, and they have a very distinct style. You have your own very specific style. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, where is it coming from? Because let's say, so I'm from Scandinavia. I'm from Denmark, and part of the old myths about the Thor and Odin and all those gods and all of this, the Vikings and this, there was also dragons there. You know. There were two specific dragons, but they don't look anything like your dragons. And then the Chinese, they have their own style of dragons that is completely different. So I'm looking at yours and I'm trying to think, where did this start? But there you have it, Maleficent.
Yeah, there is Maleficent, and after there is the Chinese one in the books that I got for the snake thing, like the floating snake. They don't have wings, they don't have 4 legs or 2 legs, or because you're different type of dragon everywhere. But the one interesting thing is that dragons are in every culture all over the world.
Why do you think that is?
Well, maybe because they exist. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, I'm just thinking. I'm thinking you have probably investigated the subject more than I have.
Yeah. I was sure they were in New Zealand because you have like so much amazing, place where pristine nature.
Yeah.
Very like the Milton Sound and everything like this. Also sounds in the south of the South Island. It's a very, very mysterious place, and I was sure they were there.
And they do have in New Zealand, they do have these myths of creatures that are protecting nature and all of this.
Yes, they are, but it's not dragon though. I mean, it can be linked to the Mayan big snake, which is kind of a dragon. Actually, that's where you find like similarities of like it's always like a mixture of different animals. Including the snake.
Yeah.
Chinese, it's the same thing. It's like a dragon is like tiger, eagle, snake, and I don't remember what. But it always mixture of different animals that they pick there and there. It's super interesting.
And usually they have quite high intelligence as well.
Yes. I mean...
Then the Nordic dragons, the dragons that we have, there are two basically. There is Nidhogg, which is like a typical sort of with wings,
yes,
like your Smaug type of dragon,
Yeah.
And then we have another dragon that's sort of like a big snake that circles around the entire world, and lives in the water. But they're not very nice people. They're full of anger and revenge and but I think when you see the Chinese dragons and those ones, they have more they're nicer to people,
They are nicer. They are symbol of water, as in Europe, like the Western, it's more fire. So they destroy stuff and everything like this with fire. Also, there is a huge discredit from the church, the Christian church, about every kind of pagan beliefs. So they kind of like put the devil, like they put they have a lot of creatures, including the dragon, that you couldn't really like. It's always like linked to something really demonic and something like this. Okay. But in Asia, especially in Japan, I was really, really attracted to the Japanese dragon. Actually, at the beginning, I was drawing my dragons more like the Japanese one, like with very elongated dog face, not squash dog face. Like
when you say that, I'm thinking Spirited Away.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
and the river spirit that is a dragon, right?
Yes,
because it's
like this kind of half dog, but very elegant. So when I went to Japan the first time, I fall in love again with the dragons because it was everywhere, and it was so elegant and so beautiful, and all the stories and Miyazaki work and everything like this, and you are like, okay, it's perfect. But it's always a good spirit. That's right.
Is this so? When you see Maleficent when you see that dragon in the cinema, is that the same? Is that the same time that you become an artist, or is that before that?
No, because I was 6 years old. I was 6 years old, but I was drawing before.
Yeah,
and I just focus a little more on stuff like that, basically.
Do you remember? Have you just always been an artist? Has that always, as far as you can remember back, it was just something you did and it was a part of who you were? Or was there a moment where you sort of where it just sort of clicks into place? And
no, it's, I don't remember when. Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, it's always kind of part of my life, basically. I was a very quiet, introvert child. So at the moment I learned to read quite early. It was as good because my mother wanted us to learn to read quite early, like 5, something like this. I was like, yeah, yeah, and write well. She was pretty severe with us that, but it's things that always like I'm a more quiet child. You give me paper and pens and books and everything like this, and I will have a blast for days, basically.
Were your parents, were they, or any of you in your family, were they artists? Were there any artists around you?
I got a aunt which was because she passed away a long time ago. She was an artist. She was a painter, like professional painter. But we really did never really catch up when I was a kid. So it come from nowhere, basically.
Because when you're a child, I was the same, the quiet child. Give me paper to draw on, or give me a book to read, and that's it. I'm fine. I will not bother anybody. But then there comes a time when now you need to start thinking about jobs and education, and all of a sudden, it's fine to be an artist when you're a little kid, no problem. But unless you have people around you that can show you can also do this as a grown-up.
Yes.
It's hard to make that transition from the kid that draws all the time to the one that says, I want to make this my living.
Yeah.
How did you make that jump?
Well later, because for me, drawing was part of, my skills, but I didn't really thought about doing something with it, basically. And you come from a family where everybody have really serious jobs.
Yeah.
And I was quite good at school. So basically, I guess that I sense that everybody was expecting me to do a serious, like
a real job,
trying to target something in medicine school. My father is a doctor, or some lawyer, or like something, or teacher, like philosophy teacher or something, like whatever, professor, but something. And the thing is that since some kid, I was very, very, very sensitive to movies. And we went a lot to see movies. And I grew up in the 70s, 80s, so we were lucky to have tons of movies were awesome, like Dark Crystal, Legend, that I saw as kids in cinema. And at one point, it started to run in your head, well, wait a minute, there's people who do that movies. Like it's a job. They don't do that for fun. It's actually their job. And I start to think about it.
Can I ask you, when did that happen? Because a lot of people enjoy film, they enjoy some things like that, let's say comic books or maybe video games or something like that, but they never stop to think there are people making this for a living.
So that's funny because I keep diaries when I was a kid and teenager.
Oh, wow.
And I can pinpoint exactly because I wrote it. And I collect articles about George Lucas and ILM. So I was 15 years old when I was like, that's what I want to do. That's really what I want to do. I want to do animatronics, and I want to be on set, to build the set. At this moment of time, it was like, so I have to study engineering to do but I was really set up on like, I want to do that job for real.
Wow.
Yeah, 15 on my diaries.
How about computer graphics? When was your first experience with that? You were thinking of not CGI, not computer graphics, but going through engineering, going through the physical props and all of this.
Yes, I went to. So in France, you didn't have that yet, because it's like I got my baccalaureate when I was in 1992. So we didn't have all the schools that we've got right now, like even private school or whatever. We didn't have any of this. So I went to a cinema school, actually, called Ciné-Sup, which is in Nantes. And it was a preparation for 2 years to prepare you to the big school of cinema where the famous and Louis Lumière. And famous, I wanted to be in set design, set decoration. So I prepared for 2 years. So you learn a lot of things. You see a lot of movies, a lot of intellectual things, and blah, 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 blah. And we were still not in the area of what I like, which was like American movies, a little more fantastic. We were like studying La Nouvelle Vague and Neorealism, Italian Neorealism. Westerns. I love westerns. So yeah, that was cool. But it was really, really, like low-key about sets and there is this kind of hatred about cinema, about like American movies. And I remember we've got a festival at Nantes called The Three Continents. So they show movie made in 3 different continents. It's a 1 week festival and everything. And it was the same week that Jurassic Park, the first one, was released in France. And I went to see Jurassic Park instead of the other movies. And we had to do a paper to say like about which movies we like in the festival. And I just saw Jurassic Park. And I was blown away.
Yeah.
I saw it 3 times. I was like, man, how they did that? That's amazing. It's still so good when you see it, by the way.
Absolutely. I honestly, amazing. I think the people that, I think we're maybe the same age. I also got my baccalaureate in 92.
Yeah.
And just the generation before us, I think when they saw the first Star Wars with the Star Destroyer that comes over the screen in the beginning, that's the moment where they think, I want to make this.
Yes.
But for me,
Yeah.
the Jurassic Park, I saw that and I was like, wow, that
Yes.
thing right there.
Exactly.
I want that.
That's exactly that. Like this sensation where like, oh my God, that's like it's so real. I want to do that. That's one thing that I want to do. So Jurassic Park.
Do you know who painted the textures for the T-Rex in Jurassic Park?
Yes, actually, it's there is one lady. Oh my God, I don't remember her name. That I met actually. I met them when I went to ILM San Francisco to work. I met all my heroes, like the guy who did like the puppet for Ghostbusters. Like the green slimy thing.
Yeah.
The two ladies who were working on the T-Rex texture, Gene Bolt. Because Dragon-Earth, of course. Dragon-Earth arrived a little after, but I was obsessed with that movie. Obsessed, literally.
I can imagine, yeah. Well, see, because I am just fascinated with texture work,
Yeah.
There is no world history of texture art. What we do is not big enough to have a history written about us. But I'm writing these little notes. I'm trying to figure out who did this key acid, who did this, because these are historical moments,
Yeah.
And I was talking to the artist that was animating the T-Rex at ILM, a Canadian guy called his nickname is Spaz. He said to me that Joe Lettieri, famous visual effects supervisor at Weta now, was the one that painted the textures for the T-Rex. But before he told me that, years before, I had heard the story of two women that did all the textures on Jurassic Park. So now I'm a little confused here, Allow me to interject here for a moment. So I once asked Steve Williams, also known as Spaz, basically the guy that came up with the whole idea of producing the dinosaurs in 3D graphics instead of as maquettes or figurines. As such, Steve Williams, or Spaz, is the most important pioneer we've had in visual effects. He basically laid the foundation for what visual effects is today. I don't think his importance for visual effects can be overstated. I asked him once, who painted the textures for the T-Rex, as that's one of the seminal assets of visual effects history. And he told me Joe Lettieri did. Joe Lettieri, of course, probably is most famous for his visual effects supervising work at Weta. Until that point, I didn't know Joe Lettieri worked at ILM, but hey, a lot of people have passed through those doors. And what I also didn't know is that Spaz, Steve Williams, is an incorrigible prankster. So, taking him at face value, I wrote that down, I made a note of it. I think he was just pulling my leg at that point. That's my personal take on it. I'm thinking the artist that painted the textures for the T-Rex was Jean Bolt and Caroline Rendu. I still don't know how to pronounce her surname.
No, I really have to find for you to send to you their name later. We were in the same rooms that you have Jean Bolt. I mean, you have like all your heroes, C. Welton.
Jean Bolt.
Or is this guys who are whoa.
See, the two ladies that painted textures on Dragonheart, I believe that's Jean Bolt and Caroline Rendu or something like that. Rendu?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yes. So it's there is Caroline.
Yeah.
And so when I will remember.
Okay, if you remember later. Because I write my little history
of
texture work.
I'm so sorry about that, because it's really. I met so many people. At one point, it's just like, and I stayed only 6 months.
Yeah,
so
you were there for.
Very short.
You were there for just for Avengers, or?
No, I was there to high five my 15 years old herself, who wrote in her diary that she wanted to work in ILM San Francisco.
Of course, you have to do it.
The thing is that on my personal life, I'm with my partner, Victor, who is also a texture artist, a brilliant texture artist, actually, better than me. And I've got the job. And to go in United States is really complicated. You need to have this work visa, which is alien with special power or whatever they call it. And Victor was supposed to get a job as well after me. But it was really complicated to get the visa because this visa is made on the fact that you've got an award, or if you've got articles in the, it's really about showing off, not really on the quality of your job. It doesn't matter if you have like 20 years of experience. What they want is like a shiny article or a shiny little prize. So Victor came for 3 months as a tourist, but it was clear that we won't be able to stay. So basically, we look for a job that we get a job. Both of us, we try to look for a job like both of us. I have to leave just for that, basically, because it was, it's on a personal matter. They understood because it's what it is, basically, but yeah.
Yeah, that is a complicated situation, and those American work visas they are complicated for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It was like but I don't regret anything. I mean, I've got like 6 months of blast, basically.
Well, I thought I was looking at your resume, and I just thought maybe you just came for just that one show. Sometimes we're just hired for a single project, and then after that, they crew down, and then
I didn't even know on which project I will work on. I arrived like, woohoo!
But you're right. This is ILM, particularly the San Francisco office. The Bay Area office.
No.
This is the birthplace of visual effects.
Exactly.
It's the mecca. It's the
exactly, and it was not even the range because before they were working in the range of George Lucas.
Yeah.
So now it's like studios who are in the Presidio area. Really beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. But it's just like I was really happy because I don't have it to regret anything anymore. There is no regrets. So
I know it sounds maybe silly for people that don't understand, but this is it's like a bucket list thing where
exactly
you can tick it off your list, and there you are.
Exactly. That's exactly that. It was like bucket list done. And and I met amazing people, and amazing people that I'm still friends with, like really. Perfect. And people who were like generation who did the first texture work on the animatronics, and who then moved to computer graphics and everything like this. And I find that amazing. Seriously.
I wonder where are these people? Where are they today? Are they still doing texture work, or have they moved on to, I don't know, CG supervision or something else, or maybe they've stopped working in the industry altogether?
When I arrived, one of them was retiring for the second time, and he was 70 something.
Oh.
Yeah, he retired like at one point. Like I want to do other stuff.
I like that.
Imagine that's.
I like that.
But a lot of them still work because I have to say that the place for 6, it's a very relaxing place to work. ILM, I really enjoy how it's. You have a lot of talented people, but you have no competition whatsoever. Everybody is very relaxed and confident in their abilities. So it's really, you work in an open space basically. But it's very relaxing. I can't explain how you feel so, relaxed.
How did you feel coming into this space? Obviously, everybody there they were relaxed. They were at peace with themselves. They didn't have anything to prove.
No.
But I hear, for example, new hires coming into Pixar a lot of them are so starstruck. They're so crushed by the talent around them that they cannot work. They can't. They're just like frozen up because they're so scared. Did you feel like that in that place?
A little bit at the beginning. A little bit at the beginning, especially that amazingly they welcomed me like I felt like for like the first day I felt like a rock star. They welcomed me like I was like really like so well, and I was completely, and it's really hard because it's like people to who, it's not hard, sorry, but it's difficult to compute that you have these people who are amazing, that you know their name, you know them, you admire their work, and they are like, oh, you are the dragon lady. You are like, oh, that's awesome. I love your work. How you have to tell me how you did that and that, and you're like, what?
Wow.
And I froze the first week. I literally froze the first week because I was worried not to be at the,
How did
at
you
their level.
how did you get past that first week? How did you break out of that frozen state?
I was helped. Jean Bolt, she was my supervisor in texture, and she was awesome. She's very funny, so she take everything with a lot of humor. And she came to tell me and said, Myriam, nobody will ask you to do something super fast. Like you have the time that you need. You will have the time that you need to do something. Don't put pressure on yourself. Try to relax and just try to enjoy what you are doing. You have the time. We give you all the time that you need to do what you have to do. And that was it.
That sounds amazing.
No, she was oh, seriously, she like I owe her so much because she saw that I was a little panicked. And I come from Weta, where Weta Digital, the rhythm is a little it's a fast pace in Weta. You have to be really, really efficient because you have to do the thing really, really fast. Several number. It's a different way of working, and really completely different. But 7 years in Weta, your brain is kind of like set up on. So you have to be ready now. Like to do 5 assets in the same time. Like it's I have to be. And she completely saw that. And she was like, you have to break from that mold. So take your time. Enjoy, relax, put music, do your stuff. And
Wow.
And she was awesome.
I have to say, this sounds like, in my experience, good supervisors are hard to find.
Yes.
There are not that many of them.
No.
This sounds like some of the best stuff I've heard from a supervisor.
Yes.
I have literally seen supervisors in the same situation, in the exact same situation, where they just shrug their shoulders and say, well, maybe this gig is not for you. And just let you drown,
Yeah, absolutely.
That also happens. So this sounds fantastic.
No, I was really lucky. Like, they were fantastic. They really understood because I was not the first person to come from Weta, and so basically they learn how to handle us when we arrive. That we are like completely wired in a different way. When ILM is not, they prefer to take their time, but to do it right. And that's why for me, it was really relaxing. It's not like, oh, you have 3 days to do what, and you know that you will never be able to do something great in 3 days. But after you have like iteration for 3 months, I appreciate that ILM, it was like, you have 3 weeks, but you can go from beginning to finish at your pace and do it. I never did overtime in ILM. Never.
About ILM, I want to inject a little note of caution here. Myriam had a fantastic experience at ILM in San Francisco. After interviewing her, and obviously her description of life and working at ILM made a huge impression on me as a place where it doesn't need much. It is the OG. It is the mythical birthplace of visual effects. So it doesn't need much to sort of push you over the edge, but it certainly made a big impression on me as a place I would love to work, as per her description. 2 years later, I have worked at ILM. I never worked at the real ILM in San Francisco. I worked out of the Vancouver studio. And my experience was very different from what she described there. I found it to be like most visual effects studios, if not all, that all of them up front, they're saying the same thing. Oh, we're different. We care about people, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, they are exactly like every other visual effects studio. Then again, it is a business that revolves around dollars and cents. I was given a 1-year contract, and I was cut short on my contract after 7 months. So mileage may vary. Of course, you should say, I'm not saying Myriam is a liar. Not at all. Not at all. She's a different person than I am. She's a different artist than I am. She certainly has different skills that I do. And the time and place also plays a huge role in things. Also, regarding timing, there's something else that we said. By my best guess, so I think Myriam was working on Avengers at ILM, and that work probably took place 2014 to 2015. The film opens in 2015. So let's say she was at ILM 2014, 2015, sometime in that space. I was at ILM in 2022 to 23. So she was there pre-pandemic. I was there just as the studio is sort of like coming out of the pandemic. This is a gap of, probably around 8 years between her experience and my experience. That is an absolute ocean of time. So many things can have happened in that time that has completely changed how a studio functions and operates. So again, this is another example of how your experience may be very different from mine. If you encounter a studio at a time when things are going well for it, you're on a film that has a decent budget and so on, you have a team with a supporting supervisor, all of these kind of things, that will play massively into what kind of experience you have of a certain studio, as opposed to if you are at another point in time on another show. Maybe it's, let's say, a TV show with much less budget. You will experience this studio in a completely different way. So I have to say, looking back though, after hearing Myriam speak in glowing terms about ILM, and me as an artist, as a geek, so badly wanting to believe that, really wanting to believe that there is that ideal place out there, that ideal studio where everything just works and where you're surrounded by brilliant colleagues and people are friendly and you have time enough to put love and care and attention into your work. I think in hindsight, that made me lower my natural defenses, made me lower all my normal, filters and shields that I normally have with me when I'm entering any workplace. And that made me a lot more vulnerable to the things that took place there in my case, because I had suspended my defenses, and the blows that I inflicted upon artists as a normal part of our life, really. We've come to accept it as normal. I had no defenses for those until much, much later. And that was a mistake. There is no perfect place out there. And that's not something we should cry about and, the world's smallest violin and poor me and all that stuff. It's just, we have to remember, this is a business. And we are fulfilling a role in that business, and that business is not driven by people's care for your feelings and your well-being. It's driven by dollars and cents. And as artists, we see our work as something higher than that, something more meaningful than that. But for a moment, get real. It's just lions being lions. Thanks for spending a little bit of your day with us. We have a tiny bit of housekeeping to do on the way out. If this episode has been helpful to you, why not share the podcast with your colleagues and friends? If you'd like to support the podcast, I'd appreciate if you bought me a coffee. You can do that on Ko-fi. That is spelled ko-fi.com/The Naked Texture Artist. One word. If you have suggestions, comments, or questions, I'd love to hear them. Feel free to drop me a line on thenakedtextureartist@gmail.com. That is The Naked Texture Artist written out in all one word @gmail.com. As I mentioned, having a busy day job in visual effects means my release schedule for this podcast can be a bit irregular. So if you don't want to miss out, subscribe to The Naked Texture Artist wherever you get your podcasts. Or follow the podcast on the socials, then you'll be alerted when the next episode drops. The music in this episode was Awake by Tycho. Nick Sifoni helped put the sound together, and everything else was done by me, your host, Mark Pierre Sondergaard. Speak to you soon.